We knew the inevitable moment would come. He would learn about podcasting and ask the pointed questions.
It was high time a producer took over his everyday education. Giessa may have been a mistake.
Are you questioning my editing skills?
Is your episode so perfect that it may never be questioned?
Frankly? I'm very proud of my editing skills. I've put in my
They're
10,000 hours.
They're really good. Yeah.
Welcome to Gom Jabbar, your guide to the iconic world of Dune. We'll be exploring the themes, philosophies, and characters found in the sandy depths of this vast universe, from Frank Herbert's groundbreaking novels to the adaptations on film and TV. My name's Abu.
My name is Leo.
Leo!
Yes. Oh, yes. Yes.
It's time for another book club, baby!
I was thinking about it as you were reading that intro. I'm like, we're going to be doing this for a year.
Yes, this is the next year of our lives.
It all begins today. Yes, this is the first episode of our Heretics of Dune book club series. My God.
Yeah, oh my goodness. I'm excited to get into Heretics of Dune.
Yeah.
The fifth book by Frank Herbert, 5 of 6 that he wrote in the Dune saga. This has been a long time coming, and I think we'll talk more about it, but I think I have some interesting feelings going into Heretics. To be totally transparent, Heretics and Chapter House are the two books I'm least familiar with, and they are the ones I've read the least. You know, I've read Dune many times, I've read Messiah many times, Children a couple of times, God Emperor a couple of times. Heretics and Chapter House, I can't remember the last time I guess 4 or 5 years ago was the last time I read them, and I haven't touched them since. So this will be interesting to come into it in deep dive book club fashion for me, because I remember not being super fond on these books, but I imagine our discussions will change that feeling.
As they always do. Yeah, same for me. I think I've read these two books only once each, and I remember feeling like there was more to it that I was missing, and then, and then never going back in to find that stuff.
Exactly.
Well, before we get into the book club episode, let's take care of our housekeeping. Today's episode, as usual, will contain no spoilers beyond the pages and books we've covered thus far.
That's right. And of course, a huge shout out at the top of the show for our Kwisatz Haderach level patrons, K-Sake, Daniel, Gian, Roman, Kabbalah, Jonathan, Lambert, and C.R. Spruill.
Ugh, one breath wonder.
My goodness. The generosity on display here.
Yeah.
Would melt even Shuang Yu's ice cold heart.
Oh my God. That's somehow the most outrageous thing you've ever said.
A huge thank you, of course, to our Kwisatz Haderach level patrons for melting our hearts and helping pay our bills, but also a huge shout out to all of our patrons at every level, to all of our listeners who tune in and share the show with friends and family. Every little bit helps, and every little bit continues to make this show possible. And we thank you so much.
It's true. Thank you. Now, today's episode. The game plan is going to seem pretty familiar. This is a book club. So we're going to go through a summary of today's chapters, and then we're going to dive into a couple of takeaways. Now, some quick context and a slight change, kind of, for this book club.
Mm-hmm.
Heretics of Dune was published in 1984, which is significant because it was less than a year after the Dune Encyclopedia was published, which means this is the first time that we are doing a reading together for which we do not have the Dune Encyclopedia as an additional annex of lore and content.
Yeah.
Now, for that reason, the spice morsels in this series are going to be a little bit more. There might be episodes that don't have any. There might be episodes that have a few, but they are not going to be like extended lore tidbits from the encyclopedia. Instead, they might have like the real world inspirations, some of that deep dive research that we do that doesn't really fit into the episode, but is interesting for
Yeah.
us as fans of this book series, as well as other things, like, for instance, Chair Dogs, which we'll talk about in a later episode, and like the other books it was featured in, stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. The most recent example of this I can think, we kind of did this in God Emperor during that book club series.
Like the No plays.
If you'll recall, right, like all of the Japanese inspiration that
Yeah,
was
yeah.
sprinkled throughout God Emperor of Dune, and we did all that research on no plays, and you like really dove deep on it. That's more of what will be happening here in Heretics, because, you know, frankly, we don't have the encyclopedia to rely on now
Right.
for amazing, fun, extended lore world building. And so the spice morsels will be slightly evolved.
Yeah, indeed. Well, before we get into our reading, we're going to take a quick break. So don't go anywhere, dear listener. We'll be right back right after this break.
Welcome back, folks. Let's begin with our chapter summaries.
So excited.
Heretics of Dune, chapters 1, 2, and 3. Hope y'all did the reading. This book begins on the planet Gamu, a mere 1,500 years after Leto II's death. So once again, an enormous time skip in between books.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, folks.
Yeah.
You'll never fucking guess who is in the courtyard right now training.
Korba. Fuck, no, probably
that
not.
would be a wild choice by Frank
wouldn't that
to
be
bring
such
Korba
crazy
back.
twist?
No, of course, it's Duncan motherfucking Idaho!
Duncan, Idaho! Good Lord,
man-
he's hot.
He's hot, but he's also a child here. So
Oh, true. Never mind.
he's cute.
It still feels wrong.
It still feels a little
you
wrong.
know what? Scratch
He
it.
will be hot in the future. Scratch it. Cut that part. Duncan motherfucking Idaho, the 12-year-old Gola, is in the courtyard. He's performing some advanced Bene Gesserit training under the watchful eye of Reverend Mother Shuang Yu and Reverend Mother Lucilla, and of course, the guard patron.
Yep.
Now, Lucilla, who is a notable hottie, described hilariously by Frank as, quote, a brown-haired charmer with full breasts and a motherly disposition, end quote. Frank really telling on himself. That's clearly his type. Lucilla has just arrived on the planet, and she was sent by Reverend Mother Superior Alma Mavis Terraza, who we will meet in a chapter shortly. And Lucilla's role here is to play the part of imprinter on Duncan, whatever that means.
Yeah.
Initially, she seemingly is going to play this motherly role for the young Duncan Idaho, but then as he ages, it's heavily implied that it's going to turn sexual, basically.
Sure. It's like teach him all forms of love, basically.
Exactly. Now, throughout this chapter, the two Reverend Mothers are chatting about Duncan and Lucilla's piece of the mission, right? Where she fits into the puzzle of the Gola project.
Right.
And both of them are being sort of like coy with each other, you know? They're like avoiding outright leaking what they know, but probing each other for what each other perhaps knows. And there are a couple of important details we get throughout this conversation and throughout this chapter. So to list them off really quickly here, we learn that Duncan is the 12th Gola that the Bene Gesserit have now obtained, and the others were most likely assassinated, most likely by the Bene Tleilax. Now, another piece of information we get is that this Gola program, whatever the goal here is with it, is divisive amongst the sisterhood. There are many sisters who are worried, perhaps rightfully so, of accidentally activating and creating a new Kwisatz Haderach, i.e. Paul, i.e. Leto II, you know, the thing that like suppressed and nearly wiped them out for centuries. Now, along those lines, it's clear from this conversation that the Bene Gesserit itself is not a monolith. And there are some pretty abject opponents to the beliefs of Reverend Mother Superior Terraza, you know? Like, there is almost outright heresy, some might say.
Right, yeah.
Within the Bene Gesserit itself, which is interesting. We'll talk a bit more about that in the takeaways. Now, we also learned that something called the scattering has happened in between books, in between God Emperor and Heretics, following Leto II's death, and we are told that some group called the Honored Matres has returned from this scattering and poses a serious threat to the Bene Gesserit. Serious enough that they are very worried about it.
Right.
And now finally, we learn that the Bene Gesserit have tapped the legendary Supreme Bashar Miles Tegg from retirement.
Mm-hmm.
They pulled him out for one last job.
One last job, Miles.
And this job is super important. Miles Tegg has to keep this Duncan, Idaho safe from further assassination attempts. And he is one of Duncan's critical teachers. He's got to train and raise this Duncan to help the Bene Gesserit with whatever they happen to be planning.
Right.
Now, to wrap up chapter 1 here, we get one last really key piece of information. We learn that there is a young woman on Arrakis, aka Arrakis, named Shiana Brugh. And she's a child, but the word on the street is she's no ordinary child, okay? She's not just going to walk over to you in the pizza parlor and steal your pizza like a normal child.
You were so traumatized by that experience.
This little cute girl tried stealing my pizza.
I know. I remember, buddy.
I'll never forget. Shiana can control the giant sandworms.
Okay, that's fucking
Arrakis.
crazy.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Even the Fremen couldn't do that.
Absolutely crazy.
Fremen had to use maker hooks and sand abrasive. Like, I don't know. They had to.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's wild. I mean, this is like universe shattering stuff. If it turns out to be true that Shiana can control the worms, wild. And it clearly plays a role in Bene Gesserit plans if that's true. And that's chapter 1.
And that's chapter 1. Oh, excellent. This was the champagne bottle on the great ship that is Heretics of Dune. Well, chapter 2, folks, I hope you like chapters about two people talking in a room. Because, boy, do I have you set for this second chapter. We've got Reverend Mother Superior Terraza in her office on Chapter House Planet, meeting with Senior Security Mother Darwi O'Drade. Now, O'Drade has been selected to be part of the kind of Operation Gola strategy, whatever that is, and is being sent to Arrakis. And this conversation between them does seem to kind of be the final interview. The sort of like, okay, now you're talking to the Reverend Mother Superior Terraza, head of all of the Bene Gesserit. This is when you get the job or not.
Yep.
Now, O'Drade and Terraza are not strangers. They go way back to when Terraza was like an upperclassman at the Bene Gesserit schools, and O'Drade was kind of her underling, like, you know, under her wing.
It was giving sorority, you know, what is it called? Like big sis, little sis or something in sororities. Yeah. That was the relationship I was getting.
Totally. And so much so that they even had nicknames for each other, which is very cute. Dar and Tar. So Darwi became Dar, Terraza became Tar. Sweet. We also learn from their conversation that weapons are being sold by the returning lost ones from the scattering. So all these people coming back from the scattering are selling weapons, right. And Terraza is worried about heightening tensions and potential conflict.
Yeah.
Now, a sizable chunk of this chapter flashes back to O'Drade's upbringing, which also coincidentally was on Gamu, and to her foster parents, and sort of the weird experience of being raised by her foster parents, but then reclaimed by the Bene Gesserit.
Yeah.
Now, her foster parents fucked up. They made a big mistake, ended up loving her, ended up having some like genuinely beautiful memories with this little girl who was, of course, mathematically just going to be taken away from them.
Right.
And when naturally 2 + 2 = 4, when the Bene Gesserit came back and said, hey, yeah, that kid's ours and you were just fostering her, so give her back, they were heartbroken and really devastated. Also, we get a description of how they lured O'Drade.
This was fucked up.
It's so fucking weird. Quote, the Reverend Mothers used voice and their considerable wiles, plus the smoke of drugging herbs.
What?
And their overpowering presence to lure O'Drade into their waiting ground car.
It's giving kidnapping.
I think that was a white unmarked van. And they were like, get the fucking kid. Use everything. Use the voice, drugs, and just their presence. There's a lot of
Yeah.
them. Very
Ugh,
exciting. Yeah.
yucky.
I think Liam Neeson would have a problem with that, and he would track
He
her down.
would.
Now, O'Drade clearly still needs some therapy about all this. Like, she loved her parents back. And this also gives us a peek as to the deep and complex emotions that she has related to her childhood that she hasn't quite gotten over in her adult years.
Yeah.
And throughout the first and second chapter, we get a few references to like love being this really dangerous thing for the Bene Gesserit. They
Yeah.
do not allow that or encourage it. They consider it a major misstep. So the fact that she has this lingering love for her foster parents feels significant in light of what we're learning in these first two chapters.
Yeah, definitely. And I think from this flashback section, one line in particular kind of really got me emotionally. O'Drade is thinking back on her childhood, just playing with her father, jumping on
Yeah.
her bed, you know? And this quote is what hit me. Quote, O'Drade played over this memory now, reluctant to discard it into the well of rationality. Marks on a wall, marks of laughter and joy. How small they were to represent so much. End quote.
Oh,
And she's
so
talking about her
beautiful.
bed like banging up against the wall and creating marks when she would jump on it and play with her dad, her foster dad.
Yeah.
And that how small they were to represent so much, that got me. Some beautiful writing there.
I will say this reminds me of when actors are told to elicit certain emotions. Naturally, one of the instincts we have is to go back to a time in our life when we felt that emotion very strongly.
Yeah.
And what is the case with kind of human psychology, or at least what I was taught, is when you are overwhelmingly emotive, you tend to latch cognitively on tiny details. And those tactile details tend to be a much more powerful triggering element for emotion than like, I remember when I was happy. Like that doesn't
Right.
do much, but you remember those tiny details and that really brings all of that stuff to life. So
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know, that felt very close to home as well. Because it's like, oh yeah, it's those tiny little things for sure.
Absolutely. No, you're spot on.
Now, through the end of Dar and Tar's conversation, we get a few more interesting tidbits of kind of stage setting. This is still the beginning of a book. And they are as follows. First, O'Drade's Atreides lineage means that she has, quote, a prescient instinct for detecting threats to the sisterhood,
Okay.
end quote. She's got the spidey sense. She's got the Peter Tingle.
The Peter Tingle, that's right.
And also, her Atreides lineage led to the Bene Gesserit putting literal prohibitions on her other memories.
Wow.
Which is nuts.
Yeah.
Like, as far as we've seen, other memories are just kind of a thing you have internally. But
yeah.
Somehow, the Bene Gesserit were like, these are off limits. Like, you
right.
don't, those doors, can't open them.
Right. Super interesting.
Very interesting.
A concept we've not come across in the books before.
Indeed. Yeah. You imagine the risks of her chatting with someone like Kanima. And she's like, yeah, maybe I should dismantle the sisterhood. It's like, oh shit. She's talking to Ganima.
Right.
Now, the Bene Gesserit, we also get very clearly, the Bene Gesserit treat Jessica as the catalyst for everything that happened in the previous books. And this is a quote that really stuck out. Quote, the failure of one reverend mother. She allowed herself to fall in love. Such a small thing, but how great the consequences. 3,500 years of tyranny. End quote.
Brutal.
Which is not a Hallmark card. They are not out here espousing the joys of loving one another. They're like, ew, she loved someone 3,500 years of tyranny. Gross.
Put that on my Hinge profile. Hey, girl, you want to start 3,500 years of tyranny with me, girl?
You want to kick it off? She's a Dune fan. She's like, yeah. If you turned into a worm, I still would love you. Yeah.
Exactly.
You go back to her profile. Oh my God, her name's Hui.
Gentle.
Gentle. Her first name's Gentle. Her last name's Hui. This also, by the way, puts into context the earlier like disparaging remarks they made about love, right? Like they are not just saying love sucks because we're emo and we're in our like, you know, we just got dumped by someone and we're like, love. Why should I waste my time on love? They're not Bukowski, right?
Yeah.
they are saying what Jessica did, she did out of love and not out of allegiance to the Bene Gesserit. It is the love that was the sort of like linchpin that
Right.
made that house of cards
And there
collapse.
are consequences to that kind of love.
There are consequences. And in an organization like the Bene Gesserit, where you have to follow the orders you're given, love is a dangerous thing because love might split your allegiance, right? You might serve,
Exactly.
as Leto said to Gurney Halleck, you may serve two masters if you are deeply in love with someone, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Now, with all of that, with the chapter, as the chapter wraps up, Darwy O'Drade, she's off to Arrakis.
She got the job, baby.
She got the job.
I hope it came with a significant salary bump. This
Yeah.
sounds like a rough job.
It sounds like a really rough job for sure. Yeah.
All right. Chapter 3, our final chapter today. We join Duncan Idaho on Gamu. And throughout this chapter, we basically catch up on the Gola's experience as he is raised and trained in this keep under the watchful eye of the Bene Gesserit and Miles Tegg. In short, he fucking hates all of the Bene Gesserit teachers. In particular, he hates Shuang Yu so much that it's a mantra he repeats to himself while he's training.
Very casual.
That part made me laugh out loud.
Yeah.
I think we all have that one teacher. Now, why does he hate Shuang Yu in particular? We get this whole story about one time when he was younger, around 9 years old, he tried to escape to get outside the keep and kind of look at the world beyond, and he got caught. And in retaliation, the Bene Gesserit did a very North Korea thing. Instead of punishing Duncan himself, they punished the guards who had become friendly with him for letting him escape.
Yeah.
And this is something that really got to Duncan. You know, he kept asking, what's the punishment? What did you do? And the Bene Gesserit are vague and ominous in the responses.
Yeah.
And he never really finds out how bad the punishment was.
Like, we don't get an explicit telling that Duncan is violently lonely, but my sense throughout this flashback chapter is he has no one. He has no friends. He has no one of his age. So the like 3 or 4 guards that have become friendly to him and have become more than just your job is to protect me, taking them away through this like fucked up punishment method is an act of like really brutal isolation.
Yes, absolutely. I think Shuang Yu even says at one point very directly, he has no friends. Like, he just has his teachers here and the Bene Gesserit, and that's
and
it.
He kind of hates all of them. So good luck, Lucilla.
Now, luckily, Duncan does have something that I love very much, access to a big-ass library full of books.
Yeah.
And he learns quite a bit throughout his teachings and through his own research in the library. He eventually comes to the realization through the Bene Gesserit Gyasa kind of fucking up and letting it slip. He realizes he's a Gola, and he learns all about Leto II's tyranny. He learns all about Arrakis. He's kind of catching up on the first 4 books of Frank Herbert's Dune saga, basically. Yeah. And one of the funniest lines in this section is when Duncan wishes that, quote, he had arrived during their time, serving as one of the rare male advisors in the female army that had worshipped the great god emperor. Oh, to have lived on Arrakis in those days, end quote, is a thing he literally thinks. And I'm like, Frank, you're being campy, and I love it. This is so funny.
It. Yeah, it's clearly Frank having a good time being like, isn't it funny that Duncan's back? It's funny that Duncan's back. Let's have Duncan wish that he could have been there at that time.
Yeah.
Such
a funny like meta cheesy joke line. Love it.
Yeah.
We also learn in this chapter that the Bashar, Miles Tegg, has been serving as Duncan's weapon master and military teacher all throughout his training, and Duncan will constantly pester him with questions, and the Mentat Bashar will basically be like, I don't have an answer for you, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
And he either refuses to answer outright, or his answers are super cryptic and don't actually reveal much to Duncan. He's very much kept in the dark and is slowly drip-fed the information as the Bene Gesserit want him to learn it, basically.
Right.
He does learn, again, from Gyasa, who continues to sort of fuck up and let things slip.
There's a reason
seemingly ahead of schedule, I think.
Sent away.
Yeah, and then she loses her job. He does learn that he is basically being prepared to live on Arrakis.
Right.
That is the goal.
Right.
That's why he's being taught all of these skills and why he's learning about Leto 2's tyranny, etc., etc. And that's a big revelation for him and for us. He is being groomed to one day go live on Arrakis for whatever purpose.
Totally.
Now, once we're all caught up with Duncan's sort of backstory, in the present moment, we are still kind of where we were in Chapter 1. Duncan is training, and Lucilla and Shuang Yu are looking down on him. And we kind of get Duncan's perspective in this moment. He looks up at Lucilla, and she seems different from the other Bene Gesserit that he hates, right? In particular, she's not giving Shuang Yu vibes. And again, she's giving that like motherly matron vibes as well that are obviously supposed to be comforting for Duncan. And we can tell already that that is what's happening. It seems like he's willing to give her more of a chance than the other Bene Gesserit. But that's where the chapter ends. Duncan continues to train and prepare. We still don't know what for, but we are all now caught up with his experience at the keep.
Indeed.
That's chapter 3, and that's today's reading, folks.
Yeah. Oof. Nice.
A lot of scene setting, a lot of character introductions, of course. It's the start of the book. It's the first 3 chapters. But already, I think a lot of interesting ideas are being planted in classic Frank fashion.
Yeah. I had the misfortune recently of reading a Brian Herbert book, and it is refreshing to not be given a ton of exposition and not to be given a bunch of like heavy-handed stuff. I mean, there's a lot of people just not telling each other stuff, and you can look between the lines and you can get some of it, but there's quite a bit that we still don't know, and that really does motivate me to like, oh yeah, I want to keep reading.
Yeah. And actually, a little behind the scenes for folks listening to this after the fact, we are recording this live for patrons in Discord, and there are people listening to us right now and chatting. And one of our patrons, Daniel, pointed out a really interesting observation about chapter 3 that I think is worth noting here. Daniel asks, when, if ever, has Frank Herbert done this tactic of one chapter from one perspective and then another from a new perspective?
Right. Like the same period of time covered, but from 2 different perspectives.
Right. Because chapter 1 and chapter 3 are basically all happening in the same time space, but one from Duncan's view and one from the Bene Gesserit view. Very interesting. I can't recall a time that Frank did that before.
I can't either, and that's why I wanted to highlight this. Great observation again, because also I think we are seeing quietly Frank evolving as an author.
Evolve as a writer, yeah.
Like I think he is, he is kind of experimenting with that pace of how do we show a single moment. And we definitely got like chapters where it'd be God Emperor Leto, and then later we would get Duncan's reflecting on the conversation, but not really actively being in the same moment.
Yeah. Great observation. Thanks for pointing that out, Daniel. Okay, with the chapter summaries out of the way, y'all know what time it is. It's time to take a breather, but don't go anywhere. After the ad break, we'll be back to talk about our takeaways and then chomp down on some delicious spice morsels. We'll see you in a minute.
Welcome back, everybody. Oh my gosh. Hope you enjoyed the break. Hope you did some cartwheels and advanced Bene Gesserit training maneuvers or something. Our first takeaway today is just, my God, it's been a long time since Leto 2 died. So we wanted to dwell on some of the new vocabulary this book has thrown at us, and we want to maybe do a little bit to bridge the gap between God Emperor of Dune and Heretics. So the first kind of point here is old planets, new names.
That's right.
So let's go through some of these. First up, we've got Gamu, which was originally Giddy Prime.
Oh, I know that place.
Yeah, the industrial planet of House Harkonnen.
Yep.
And we're told that Gamu was actually renamed by Gurney motherfucking Halleck in the streets, Gurney in the sheets.
Incredible.
Himself, following the events of Children of Dune, which is fascinating.
Yeah.
Also because throughout God Emperor of Dune, Leto and the Bene Gesserit all refer to it as Giddy Prime.
Right.
They all just call it Giddy Prime. So my understanding is, taking all of this as prime canon, my understanding is Leto and the Bene Gesserit, who have thousands of years of memory of the planet being called Giedi Prime still refer to it as Giedi Prime because they're old dogs not trying to learn new tricks. Meanwhile, the actual inhabitants of the planet, the people who are actually like living in the cities and that sort of thing, they're like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, this is Gamu.
I see. You just think the branding took a while to
I think
solidify.
I think the branding on planet probably solidified pretty quickly. I'm just saying that like Leto 2 and the Bene Gesserit discussing this planet are going to refer to it with like its historically significant name and not
Yeah.
the like rebranded thing. Same thing, you and I, we might call it, Twitter still.
Right.
Even though it's called X now, fucking whatever.
Okay.
Because we're not,
That's a really great comparison. Like no one's fucking calling it X.
except for perhaps someone who created an account today. Because someone who creates an account today is like, well, I went to X.com and I created
Yeah.
a new X account. So my,
What?
but point is, you think about like Leto and the Bene Gesserit, they think in terms of thousands of years. So they're going to think about this planet for what it always was. And what it always was for many millennia was
Interesting.
Giedi Prime.
Yeah.
That's my
great.
understanding.
That's a great way to think about it. Yeah.
Rather than Frank fucked up, which is always possible, but it's not
Well,
like
I don't think it's a fuck up. I think it's
Yeah.
just he wrote this book later and decided to change the name. And
Yeah.
I was like, it's just like he wrote this book later and named it Gamu. And he wrote God Emperor before and didn't name it Gamu. So but it's fun to think of an in-world explanation for why that might be.
Yeah. It is also worth pointing out that, clearly at some point Gurney Halleck was like in charge of Giedi Prime, which is knowing that Gurney was in those slave pits on this planet, going from slave pits to now is in control of the planet. Pretty
Right.
fucking iconic
Incredible.
blow up.
What a come up.
What a come up. Started from the bottom, now we're here. And we also do learn that the planet itself did go through kind of a hellish period during the famine times and the scattering following Leto 2's death. But we're told, and again, this is kind of shocking, quote, the people of Dan, Caladan in those days, rebuilt the planet, cultivating it into a like kind of a lush, beautiful, foresty place.
Not the industrialized, gross planet that it was
Right.
during the Harkonnen days.
So literally we had Caladanian people on Giedi Prime making it nice.
Amazing.
It's like, okay, cool.
The Atreides victory is complete.
We also learned that Caladan, so that also shows us that Caladan is now called Dan, and Arrakis is of course called Rakis, because that extra syllable is really weighing us down.
Oh, my goodness.
You want
Who's
me to
got the
say
time?
Arrakis? Ew.
Get out of here.
I got things to do.
So many things to do. Rakis.
Rakis.
So fast.
Rakis.
Rakis. Dan.
Where are you going? Rakis. Anyway. So syllables have gone out of style. Everyone likes shortening everything. Very exciting. Whatever. I'll point out here. So with the exception of Gamu, which was renamed following Children of Dune, we know a lot of these planets had pretty consistent identities for literally thousands of years, right?
Yeah.
Like Arrakis was called Arrakis to the end of Leto 2's reign. And I believe Caladan was as well, although it occurs to me we didn't actually get any on Caladan perspectives to solidify that. The point is, I think, my opinion, is this is a byproduct of Leto 2's death. Like, with Leto 2's passing, the scattering, the famine times, populations suddenly could leave their planets. A lot of people died from food scarcity. And probably a lot of old structures and old ways of thinking had crazy turnover, right?
Yeah.
If you imagine a huge chunk of the population dying, those younger people are going to have a lot more say in how things are defined. And, maybe that younger generation is going to go, why are we calling it Arrakis? Oh, that's boring. Rakis. Fast Rakis.
Yeah.
Hashtag Rakis.
Right.
So I think this is another byproduct of Leto 2's dying is cultural turnover happening as a byproduct of both lots of people leaving and also this kind of like massive scale of death.
Yeah, that's fun. That is a great observation. Like, why would the planet names change now versus the last 3,000 years? Like, why change now in book 5 outside of just Frank wanting to change them? This is a great explanation that Leto 2's effect on the galaxy is felt so deeply that even the naming schemes of planets that have long been Kaladin, have long been Giddy Prime, have felt the ripple effects of Leto 2's passing.
Right? Well, he was forcing stagnation, and language and naming conventions is another thing that can be stagnant or not.
Yeah.
It's something that I think about a lot when I'm learning French, and there's a lot of things in French that are just frustrating as a non-French speaker. And you ask a French speaker, why is it like that? And they go, well, that's how it is. And then you learn that there is kind of an intentional effort to keep it the way it is for out of like a pride in the language, which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little different than we handle American English, but it's fine. The point is something like how you call things or the language, keeping all of that stagnant as well. Perhaps that was part of it. Perhaps that was part of Leto's piece, was also making sure that cultural cross-pollination, right, the sort of globalization or the sort of interconnectivity of all of humanity is also shut down, so that as soon as his death happens and everyone scatters, then also ideas, politics, philosophy, all of those things experience their own explosion and, turnover and all of that. So very interesting. I mean, again, we're kind of digging, but it's still, I think it's all in the text, and it's fun to imagine what might come of that.
Odrade explicitly has the thought that nothing survived Leto 2's passing, not even the Bene Gesserit. There's a great quote in these chapters in chapter 2 where she thinks how Leto touched every single part of human existence. And to your point, language would be a part of that as well, of course.
Yeah.
And also, you're making it sound like English is a very simple language. As someone whose first language was not English,
yeah,
I before E except after C can get fucked.
You learn you've only learned the first part, or I before C, I before E except for what is it? I before
E except after C,
or when sounding like A as in neighbor or way. So if it's like neighbor or you weigh something, it sounds like the letter A, so it's I after E. And that is almost fully consistent. But it's because English borrows from so many fucking languages.
Insane. Get fucked, English. Okay, back to our takeaway. The next thing we want to touch on is the scattering. We've mentioned it a couple of times now, but what exactly are we talking about? These first few chapters tease us with some tantalizing details of what this scattering might have been.
Right.
And we're also told that there are quote-unquote lost ones that are returning from the scattering. They are returning from far away, distant, and unknown star systems back to the core worlds of the Imperium, as we've known in the first 4 books.
Yeah.
Now, the scattering, if you'll think back, was actually first referenced in God Emperor of Dune. We've heard it before in the previous book.
Right.
And it popped up in that book from the perspective of the historian Hadi Benotto after the findings of Leto 2's hidden journals, in that analysis of the journals.
Yeah, and these are like the first chapters of the book and the last chapters of the book that end up, kind of bookending the book, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Now, the idea of the scattering is also explained pretty explicitly by Leto to Hui Nori in one of their many conversations in the book. He explains to her that part of his plan, part of Leto's piece, is preventing humanity from interplanetary travel. This is a thing that frustrates Siona, of course, to no end. She expresses that as well. And this, crock-pot pressure cooker thing he's doing to humanity is to create a, quote, need to make far voyages and see strange things. Eventually, travel comes to mean freedom.
Yeah.
End quote.
Oh, I love that.
That's the feeling he's burying deep in the human psyche and the human soul.
Yeah.
Through his oppression.
Yeah.
So the scattering, thus, is this violent explosion of humanity across the stars once Leto 2 passes, right? This desire, this urge, this deep meaning of travel being equated with freedom takes place. And humanity goes to the furthest reaches of the galaxy and perhaps even beyond, because we aren't told the exact scope of how far this scattering went. There are hints, both in God Emperor and in Heretics. There are hints of the scope, but we don't know exactly how far and how widespread this explosion of humanity was.
Right.
In God Emperor, Benotto tells us that, quote, how many universes have we populated? None can guess. No one person will ever know, end quote.
Kind of feels like the point. Kind of feels like the whole reason.
Sounds a little golden pathy to me.
Sounds golden pathy to me.
In today's reading, we get another hint at perhaps the scope of the scattering. We're told that, quote, what of the lost megatrillions gone into the scattering? End quote.
That's a big number.
Mega trillions.
That's a lot.
That is an incomprehensible number of people.
I had to Google it because I was like, what does that even mean? Megatrillion, apparently 1 million trillion. So this is millions of trillions of people who have left. Like,
right.
This is not this is not how many people are there? No. This is megatrillions left. Crazy.
So we are talking a wild explosion of humanity across a huge swath of the galaxy and into far reaches of space, to Hadi Benotto's point, that we will never know. Who knows how far or wide they all went. But now some of them are starting to come back, and that raises some questions.
Indeed. Oh, what a good way to start a book. Get us invested. People are coming back. What? Oh my God, from the depths of space? Sick. Well, let's talk now about kind of the political state of the galaxy. Kind of refresh ourselves on who are the major players pushing these galactic chess pieces around. So it does not seem right now like many of the old structures of the Imperium are still around. We're not really hearing that much about the great houses of the Landsrad. We're not really hearing about CHOAM or the Spacing Guild, right? Like the Bene Gesserit are kind of just focused on their own thing. They're not like, we hope the Spacing Guild will blah, blah. It doesn't really seem yet like anything like that's happening.
Yeah. It doesn't even seem like they're around. It seems like some of these structures are irrelevant at this point. Like, I can't imagine the Spacing Guild has any sort of monopoly now that the Ixians have cracked the code of navigating the stars without spice and guild navigators, you know?
That's true, which they were getting very close to at the end of Leto's Supreme, but then really cracked before the scattering, right? That's true.
Yeah. So a lot of these structures, I mean, the great houses, we know Leto basically wiped out himself during his reign. So the Landsrad is kind of dead. And like CHOAM is a little bit unnecessary. Who needs a stock exchange when Leto is controlling everything, you know? I think a lot of these groups are no longer around at this point.
That's true. Some do still exist, though, right? Like, clearly the Bene Gesserit are around. Clearly the Tleilaxu are around, for instance.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, we're still not sure also. So, okay, the Bene Gesserit exists, the Tleilaxu exists, the Ixians, but we still don't really have a sense of the power dynamics and the sort of interplay between these factions.
Yeah.
We can make some educated guesses. For instance, the Sisterhood does seem to be very influential. Again, they are literally hiring Suk doctors, commanding Bashars, protecting entire planets. And although the Tleilaxu are opposed to them, you know, and we're kind of seeing 11 assassinated Duncan Golas, they're also getting the Golas, and we haven't yet exactly figured out how that works. Like, are they getting the Golas from the Tleilaxu from a different sect of Tleilaxu? Are they like we haven't gotten answers to that sort of quiet question either. Are they growing the Golas themselves? How are they doing that?
Right.
So anyway,
here's a great question before we move on. Here's a great question from Jody in the live chat. Jody asks, are there any clues if Mentats have come back since being banned by Leto? We don't know if they're back as a larger group, but Miles Teg is a Mentat. Yeah. So at the very least, people who work for the Bene Gesserit are probably getting Mentat training, and the Bene Gesserit are probably holding on to some Mentat skills.
Yeah, so like Mentat training and certification is still around. But
I don't think it's like a school at the height of its power like it used to be.
Yeah, exactly. Back in the day. Like the Mentat school was an organization, and that might not be the case anymore.
Yeah.
Well, in any case, getting back to the factions and the sort of major players. So yes, there's still a lot that we don't know, but there is also one new player at the table There's one new
Yes.
set of hands pushing pieces, and we know so little about them,
Oh my goodness.
and that is the Honored Matres. Now, the Sisterhood seems to fear them, although Shuang Yu is like, nah, they ain't shit.
They ain't shit.
They ain't shit. My name's Shuang Yu. They ain't shit. He's an old trucker. But Lucilla is a lot more hesitant to draw such bold conclusions based on scant evidence, as she puts it. We really don't know a lot about them, and it's clear that they pose a threat of some sort. And it's also clear that they share some similarities with the Bene Gesserit, perhaps even being distant descendants. They are referred to as descendants at one point.
Yeah.
And also, Lucilla's like, Honored Matres, Bene Gesserit, Reverend Mothers. It's kind of similar. It feels like a Joe Zo's situation. Like you go to Trader Joe's to get your, not Bene Gesserit. You get Honored Matres.
Right. Copy my homework would make it look a little different.
Yeah, exactly. You just added commas everywhere. And Shuang Yu says that they lack, sorry, I should say it like this. They lack BG powers, common sense, and a mastery of melange. Lucilla's like, you're basing that on fucking nothing,
Right.
Trucker Shuang Yu.
Right. The chewing tobacco is like leaking out of her mouth.
She's got that.
Constantly spitting.
I like
So
that
gross.
we've built this persona just out of her being surly. She's just like a surly person. You go, yep. Anyway, so
Oh, God.
as usual, Frank's style, he has set up the chessboard. He has given us some hints as to who might be important, but also he's left it all super vague. And
Right.
all we can do is just kind of buckle up and trust that we will figure this stuff out and that he'll give us more information.
That's right. So that's takeaway one. Let's get into our second takeaway today.
Let's do it.
We want to talk a little bit more deeply about the Bene Gesserit. Because here's the cool thing about these latter two books. They're super Bene Gesserit focused.
Surprise.
All of our main characters are basically Bene Gesserit. And this gives us some wild insight into the sisterhood
Yeah.
in a way that the previous four books never did. Because in the previous four books, we are always following outsiders of the
Right,
sisterhood, interacting with them. Now we are on the inside. So let's take some time here in this takeaway to dig into some of the cool new information we've already learned so far in just the first 3 chapters about the Bene Gesserit that we didn't know before.
Right.
And some that we did. That's just been reinforced again here.
Right.
So in some ways, the sisterhood has changed since the time of Leto 2. But to be clear, in many ways, it is exactly the same shady group that pulls the strings from the shadows that we've always known in the Dune saga.
Yeah. Thoroughly morally gray.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
the first example that comes to mind for us is this organization that is shady and works from the shadows remains super secretive.
Totally. Yeah.
And what's interesting is they're not only secret to outsiders, but even internally among its own members.
Right. Yeah.
We're told, quote, Bene Gesserit divisions were cut by hard vertical and horizontal barriers, divided into isolated groups that converged to a single command only here at the top, aka the Mother Superior.
Right.
Duties for which read assigned roles were conducted within separated cells. Active participants within a cell did not know their contemporaries within other parallel cells. End quote.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Such a fascinating insight into the internal structure of the Bene Gesserit.
Yeah.
How even sisters who might be working on the same project, like Shuang Yu, like Odrade, like Lucilla,
Right.
do not know what each other are doing. They're kept within their cells, even if they are parallel and working on the same project. That's crazy to think about.
This also gives a lot of perspective into characters like Margot Fenring, characters like Jessica, characters like even Reverend Mother guys, Helen. These are characters who were not the Reverend Mother Superior. And so whether that was a role that existed back then or not, it seems as though, because this is said to have not changed for thousands of years, it is very likely that they would not have known what's happening with other people.
Yeah.
And I think even someone asked recently about like whether or not Jessica would know that Yui's wife was a Bene Gesserit. And I think this very clearly for me cements, no, she wouldn't, because they're not in the same like active mission in a need to know basis, right?
Right. Very need to know. Very need to know. It's interesting how much they lean into that as an operating mechanism for the organization. Something else that we also learn from the book that is very in line with what we have known about the Bene Gesserit for 4 books now is that morally gray that you brought up earlier.
Right.
We're told that 2 of Odrade's children, of the many that she has mothered for the Bene Gesserit in her career, were quietly killed out of fear of her Atreides lineage, out of fear of another Kwisatz Haderach coming up.
Which is fucking crazy. That's wild.
Which is crazy, but also super in line, right? Like super in line.
Yeah,
it's
totally.
something that the Bene Gesserit have always done. Think of our conversations back in Children of Dune about how they treated Abomination, right? First sign of Abomination, killed.
Right.
You know, this is a classic Bene Gesserit MO, and it's clear even here, 1,500 years after Leto 2, they continued to take preemptive and extremely morally gray and extremely aggressive actions at the first sign of danger.
Right. And it's interesting now that danger is both Abomination, sure, as it always has been, but also now Atreides. Like Atreides, even just the name and the descendancy is now also a moniker of danger, because they're like, fuck, they're just a breeding ground for Kwisatz Haderachs over there. They're fucking, and they made them. I mean, it's so funny because this really is just the Bene Gesserit shooting themselves in the foot over and over again.
Right. It is an interesting dichotomy that the Atreides are so valuable because of their abilities, but so dangerous. And so the Bene Gesserit, with characters like Odrade or Lucilla, have to be so incredibly careful. They have to walk this tightrope lest they risk the rise of another Paul Atreides, the rise of another Leto 2. It's fascinating to think.
Yeah. They want them to be Atreides, but not, don't be too Atreides. That's gross. That's dangerous.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, we also get, through this little section, we get really fascinating insight into the inner workings of the sisterhood, the biggest of which is presented in the very first chapter. Quote, "Strange how the word heresy came to mind when thinking of Shuang Yu," Lucilla thought. Could there be heresy among the Reverend Mothers? ? So we are being told that among the sisterhood and Reverend Mothers, full Reverend Mothers, there are individuals who are openly defiant against the Mother Superior, Teraza.
Yeah.
Now, it is made clear that Teraza's direct orders would always be followed. But there are people who are like, I do not agree with what they're doing. And Teraza has to be like, hey, Lucilla, do not leave Duncan alone with Shuang Yu.
Right.
Like literally don't leave his safety up to her, because I'm not so sure about her. And that's crazy. Like that's an insane thing for me to think about, considering how obedient the Bene Gesserit often seem to be.
Right. And the internal chess games that are happening, because Shuang Yu took this assignment as head of the Gamu Keep to make sure she was close enough to the Gola to kill him at the first sign of danger.
Right.
You know, she is opposed to the whole Gola project, but she's going to make damn sure that she is as close to it as possible so that she can step in when necessary, when she feels necessary to take action against Teraza's orders, you know? So there's this internal division, but they're all playing this game of like 5D chess with each other without explicitly being disobedient, which is a super fun thing to read. It's fun when characters are playing that level of mind games with each other.
Yeah, it's plans within plans. I mean, this is, I think, when Frank is at his best, is when you have these, like, every character is not just a set of instructions. They have their own pull and push with the other characters around them. It's really cool.
Yeah.
I also love this consideration of, like, the Bene Gesserit, they're not a monolithic group. This is not just one order. Jessica's betrayal was a profound thing that happened. It was this insane catalyst that exists in the history of the Bene Gesserit, and she's presented as this extreme outlier. And naturally, if you've listened to our kind of massive 2-part deep dive on the history of the Bene Gesserit, you know that the Bene Gesserit, the order, has faced crazy schisms and internal revolts over the course of its like 20,000, 30,000 year history. Wild to think about Jessica being this like that important, that she kind of joins that bullet pointed list of crazy moments in the Bene Gesserit history.
Yeah.
Although it is worth noting that a lot of that history is only ever really present in the Dune Encyclopedia, or like explicitly made clear in the encyclopedia.
Yeah.
Frank's works tend to focus on, like we hear about them back to the Great Convention and things like that, but that's about it.
Yeah. I mean, like the Bene Gesserit, at least in my mind, in the first 4 books, are generally presented as this monolithic group. These women are all working toward the same goal, and they're all sort of on the same mission, sans Jessica. Jessica was the great betrayer. She was the catalyst for all of these things. And so there is this perception that like, oh, okay, this is like one focused group headed toward one focused goal.
Right.
And Jessica betrayed them, and thus all this crazy shit happened.
Right.
But here in this book to learn, oh no, like even within the group, people are like really fighting. There's a lot of infighting and disagreement, and not everyone is all in on the same plan all the time. That's interesting. That adds layers of depth to the Bene Gesserit that I don't think we got in the first 4 books in Frank's own writing. Of course, in the Dune Encyclopedia, we get that massive history of the Bene Gesserit and their many internal squabbles.
Right.
But Frank himself never wrote that. And so for him to lean into that idea here, that there's internal disunion within the Bene Gesserit, I think is something new that we're getting for the first time in Frank's work.
True.
We also get another peek at another internal working within the Bene Gesserit, and that's this like dogma about love.
Yeah.
Love is like a through line in these first 3 chapters. It's repeatedly referenced back, and what they think of love is so interesting and how it plays a part in their schemes. Quote, tolerate love, but guard against it. That was the rule. Know that it lay deep within the human genetic makeup, a safety net to ensure continuation of the species. You used it where necessary, imprinting selected individuals, sometimes upon each other, for the sisterhood's purposes, knowing then that such individuals would be linked by powerful bonding lines not readily available to the common awareness. End quote.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Wow.
There's so much there.
So much there.
Yeah.
So much there. But I think to sort of like simplify it in common terms here, like tolerate love, but guard against it, right? Like love is not a thing to completely erase from humanity. In fact, it's very useful as a tool for the Bene Gesserit. It's a way that they can bond individuals together or shape the course of human events in certain ways. Love is a great and powerful tool. And I think one of the more interesting parts of this is the final bit there where it says the bonding line's not readily available to the common awareness. Like love is a thing that makes us act in ways that can be irrational or illogical or cause us to take leaps of faith that we normally would not.
Yeah.
And the Bene Gesserit are like, perfect. We can make you do all of those irrational leaps of faith, out of bounds things if we can get you to fall in love, if we can bond you in a way that's beneficial to us. It's very interesting to consider the ways they might use love in their schemes.
It's also interesting hearing this. Of course, we're hearing this in the context of the Bene Gesserit, but this is also Frank writing. And if you look back on the first 4 books, we have Paul, who fell in love with Chani before his awakening as the Kwisatz Haderach. And it was his love with Chani, his powerful bonding line, that made him unable to take that step toward the golden path himself, right?
Yeah.
And then Leto, who became a Kwisatz Haderach before he knew love, and he even saw love as a risk with the coffee girl, the Fremen.
Oh gosh, what was her name?
I feel terrible forgetting it, but
coffee girl.
The barista.
Wow. That's such a like broy fuckboy thing to be like, coffee girl in your contacts in your phone. Like you don't even know her name. You're just like, that was coffee girl.
Or social anxiety. You just like, I forgot their name immediately and I do not have the courage to ask.
Yeah.
Sabia. Yeah. He even sees this potential future with her as jeopardizing the entire Golden Path. And to kind of wrap this all up, he realizes the Tleilaxu figured out his weakness. They naturally used Malky to realize that Leto needed true companionship. And so Hui Nari targeting him as love being his weakness.
Yeah.
We see time and time again this idea of love disarming the Atreides and or causing major shifts to happen.
Right.
It's so fascinating. And it's also fascinating to see Frank himself commenting on maybe this theme that has been there since literally Dune Messiah, right?
That's what I was going to say. Like, Frank is clearly a romantic.
Yeah.
And this is not the first time love is a major theme in a book.
Right.
It's been a theme in this whole damn saga from the very start.
Yeah.
And here we just see explicitly the Bene Gesserit view of love, which, to be fair, is quite jaded and cold to think of it as simply a tool for manipulation and control, right? But it is an essential clue into the Bene Gesserit worldview and way of thinking that I think will help us reframe this story and these characters as we get deeper into it. Just the way they look at something like love, something we consider to be so essential and human.
Well, it's the same thing with like religion too, right? For some people, religion is so close to their heart and their identity. And the Bene Gesserit are like, cool, that's a way to manipulate people.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's the same thing, right? It's like an individual might have an experience or a feeling or an emotion, and they see that as so vibrant and important to them. And then the Bene Gesserit are looking at a span of 1,000 years and they go, how can we leverage people?
Right.
Oh yeah, these are the patterns.
Right. On a long, long timeline. And the final thing I wanted to say about this love topic is for my fellow Star Wars fans out there, they might recognize some of this dogma as being very similar to the Jedi view about possessions and attachment and the dangers of that leaning to the dark side. Of course, we saw that in Anakin Skywalker and his fall.
The best 3 Star Wars movies.
Becoming Darth Vader.
Yeah.
In the best movie of all time, Revenge of the Sith. Yeah, you can draw a very clear line from the Bene Gesserit to the Jedi Order.
Right.
And while the Bene Gesserit are certainly a bit darker and way more into breeding than the Jedi ever were, there are a lot of similarities in their dogmas. And this, to me at least, is a very clear one in how they see attachments and love being dangerous, right? The Jedi perhaps are less manipulative about it, and it's more just a... Well, yeah, true. That could be argued, right? That could be argued. So... Fun to see the inspirations that spawned from Frank's stories, and obviously Star Wars being one of them.
Indeed.
So that's takeaway 2. A lot of interesting details about the Bene Gesserit. As we said earlier, these latter 2 books, Heretics and Chapter House, are very Bene Gesserit focused, and I'm sure there will be much, much, much more to learn about this powerful, influential, and mysterious group of women.
Indeed. I almost feel like there's a whole lot more chapters of this book to get there.
Perhaps a whole year's worth of
and then another
left.
book called Chapter House. I wonder what that's about.
That's right. That's right.
Now we're going to take a quick break before we wrap up with our spice morsels and our parting words. So don't go anywhere, dear listeners. We'll be right back right after this.
Welcome back, folks. Let's wrap up today's episode.
Let's do it.
As we do with a fresh plate of spice morsels.
Steaming. Still steaming.
Steaming hot. We have 2 of them for you today. Starting with the Apocrypha of Arrakis.
Ooh.
So, as always, the chapters in this book have epigraphs.
Right.
Those little quotes at the start of every chapter. That's been standard for Dune since the very first pages of the first book. Now, these first 3 epigraphs in these first 3 chapters, specifically, they cite the Apocrypha of Arrakis, and then there's a quote from Leto 2 in chapter 2, and then in chapter 3, there's a quote from the Bene Gesserit analysis.
Right.
Now, 2 of these are pretty clear and on the nose, right? Leto 2 and Bene Gesserit analysis. Cool.
Sure.
For this spice morsel, we wanted to take a minute to focus on the Apocrypha of Arrakis, because that's the first time we're hearing that, and we don't know what that is, so let's see what we can suss out about it so far.
Right.
It's also worth noting, we see the word Apocrypha twice in these first 3 chapters. One is in that epigraph in chapter 1, And then the second time we see it come up is in chapter 3 when Duncan is talking about his studies. Quote, Duncan pored over whatever the library produced for him. The Holy Book of the Divided God, the Guard Bible, the Orange Catholic Bible, and even the Apocrypha. End quote.
Even the Apocrypha.
That's right.
Even that.
So to define this for us a little bit, the word apocryphal is defined as something of doubtful authenticity, and it's typically in reference to a story that is dubious but told us the truth.
Right.
When it's capitalized, though, the word apocrypha refers to parts of the Bible that aren't sanctioned or are part of the accepted canon of the Bible.
Right. It's like writings and letters that were not included in the formalization of the Greek and Latin Bibles of a certain year. Yeah.
Some might be so bold as to claim Brian Herbert's works could be thought of as Dune Apocrypha.
It's a lot of writings that we don't consider canon. Yeah.
to maybe like put that more in context there for folks that aren't Bible freaks.
For Dune fans,
you could think of it as Brian's works are Dune Apocrypha.
We got people who are like, I didn't study ancient biblical scholar stuff, but like, I do know Dune, and oh, that makes sense. Okay, I gotcha.
Yep. So that kind of paints the picture of what it means when it says the Apocrypha of Arrakis. Right. Now, getting back to the original epigraph itself, this is what it says at the start of chapter 1. Quote, most discipline is hidden discipline, designed not to liberate, but to limit. Do not ask why. Be cautious with how. Why leads inexorably to paradox. How traps you in a universe of cause and effect. Both deny the infinite. End quote.
So cool. Also clearly Leto 2.
This is so Leto 2 coded. Holy shit.
Yeah. And I think that's important here. It's like, we don't know who wrote the Apocrypha, like the not canonized texts of the church or whatever.
Yeah.
But it seems very likely that these are like letters and journals in Daris Balat that were not considered useful for the Arrakis priesthood. Is my
yeah,
anyway.
Totally. I completely agree. It seems very clear that the Apocrypha is just many of Leto 2's rantings that maybe don't fit neatly into the vision of the church of the divided God that we hear about in these opening chapters, the church that worships Leto 2.
All of his journals about how churches are shitty and should be dismantled. Right. They're like, we're just going to...
Religion, get fucked, never worship me. They're like, let's cut that part.
That one
a bit,
is maybe. A maybe. That one's probably a maybe. Let's come back to it.
Yeah, exactly. So to wrap up this morsel, I did want to dwell for just a little bit here on what we should make of this epigraph, right?
Sure.
The actual words of it, whether by Leto 2 or anyone else.
Right.
Because, as we've said many times in the course of all of the book clubs, Frank is very intentional with these epigraphs at the start of every chapter. They're tone setting, they're important foreshadowing, they're little bits of detail that build out the world and provide context for what we're about to read in that chapter or the chapter previous, etc. You know, he's very intentional. He's not just randomly writing shit down at the start of a chapter.
Yeah, and this is the first chapter. This is the beginning of a book called Dune Heretics.
Exactly.
And it's the Apocrypha.
To start with an Apocrypha at the start of a book called Heretics, it's, Frank, amazing. So, in universe, as we've already sort of speculated, we can assume that this epigraph is some sort of like excommunicado piece of philosophy that one or more factions that are currently in the universe don't want included in their narrative. They don't want to consider it canon.
Right.
This could be the Bene Gesserit. It could be, as we said earlier, the priests of the divided God on Arrakis. On a meta level, though, this feels like a very poignant set of words to start the book with. This warning against discipline and getting hung up on all the whys and hows of it all is the first thing that Frank wants us to read and the first words he wants us to keep in mind as we dive into this story.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about tone setting.
Yeah.
Talk about Frank being like, buckle up, we're getting into this weird ass book. Stop asking why and how we got here. Okay? Yeah. And discipline is for suckers, no rules. Let's just go.
Yeah. As the Apocrypha said, read and enjoy, fucking you nitpicky bastard. You're like, Jesus. It has a fill in your name here in the Apocrypha. That's crazy. I guess I will.
Yeah.
You picky bastard Leo. Okay.
Right. It's like Mad Libs with a little
Put
your name here.
Jesus, Frank. Okay.
Man, I would fuck with a Apocrypha Mad Libs book though. That would be so dope.
That'd be fun.
We should make one, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's amazing. When you consider it on a meta level, stepping out of the lore, this is like such a brilliant way to open the book. And it's once again speaks to the caliber of writer that Frank Herbert is. He's a brilliant writer. And I think we're seeing that skill evolve over the course of the books. And brilliant way to open a book called Heretics of Dune with Apocrypha, and a brilliant way for him to set the tone and to get us, the reader, into the right mindset here.
Yeah.
Stop worrying so much about the rules. Stop constantly asking how and why. Buckle up. Enjoy the ride. Allow for the infinite to happen, right? Allow for infinite possibilities to happen in this book. Enjoy it.
Yeah, totally. Oh my gosh. Now, that is our first morsel. Our second morsel is a little refresher about the title of Bashar, because it came up a number of times today in the reading, and we just wanted to make sure it's clear. So we are given multiple references to Miles Tegg, the supreme Bashar of the Bene Gesserit, pulled out of retirement for one last job. You know, I imagine whoever approached him had a cigarette and was like, "Damn it, I know you're retired. You got to come out of retirement, though. Only you can do this job." And he's like, "Oh, I swore I'd never kill again. But for you, Captain, I'll do anything," or whatever.
I already got too much blood on my hands.
On these hands. Yeah, exactly. And he's pulled out of retirement to protect and train young Duncan Idaho. But the Bashar rank is something we actually already talked about in our Children of Dune book club, what feels like 35 years ago. Yeah. So because it feels like it was like, you know, decades ago, different life, different time, we wanted to revisit this rank very briefly just to refresh our memories and also to give ourselves some context when we hear the word Bashar. What does that even mean?
Yeah.
And what do we already know if we did our research and we know what the word means, right?
Yeah.
So from the terminology of the Imperium, so this is the end of the Dune book, Bashar is defined as, quote, an officer of the Sardaukar, a fractional point above colonel in the standardized military classification, rank created for military ruler of a planetary subdistrict, end quote. So from there, so that's what a Bashar is. And we know that Miles Tegg, at the end of his career, at the height of his career, was the supreme Bashar. We can safely assume this is the highest rank a Bashar can achieve, the sort of like head of the full military force.
Yeah.
Controlling many, many planets worth of people.
Right.
In today's reading, Tegg says, quote, mobility is the key to military success. If you're tied down in forts, even whole planet forts, you are ultimately vulnerable. End quote. Fascinating. Also interesting because we see that exact thing happen at the time of Duke Leto Atreides, where they go from one planet to the planetary fort that is Arrakis, and we see how impossible it is to set up a proper defense of an entire planet.
Yeah.
If you're just like stuck in one place. So
yeah,
fascinating, right? And because we know that Tegg's rank as Supreme Bashar means that he was like in charge of people, in charge of planets, we can take this quote as being directly from his experience. He's like, listen, kid, I've tried to protect a lot of planets in my days. We've lost a lot of battles. But we know that he's learned mobility is key. This also makes sense then why he would be in charge of protecting planet Gamu.
Yeah.
I'll also say we get numerous references to his diplomacy and how a lot of his victories won were relatively bloodless.
Yeah.
So it is also interesting to think that even though he is a Supreme Bashar, this is still a very tactical person. He's not just like sending men to die on the front lines. This is someone who is strategic and is careful.
Yeah.
All very interesting.
Yeah. All very interesting stuff. And somebody that the Bene Gesserit are very much relying on, right? They pulled this guy out of retirement because they couldn't trust anyone else to do this job, to protect Duncan and to protect Gamu. And so reliable, loyal, highly trained, smart, diplomatic, and one of the best Bashars and or Supreme Beshars they ever had. And that's a bit more context about his career and what his rank means.
There you go. Well, that's it.
That's
our first episode, the first of many to come.
That's right.
And dear listener, you might think that you're done. You might think this was a 3-chapter long book, but I've got news for you. There are more chapters. And we expect you to read them. God damn it, David.
That's right.
We expect you to read them. So make sure for the next episode, you have read up to page 90, or the chapter that ends, if you don't have the same copy as us, it's the chapter that ends with the sentence, quote, "It had happened at last," end quote.
At last.
At last. Come on. Yeah. And I'll also say, "It had happened at last." I think verbatim was said in our Discord when we started this book club. It had happened at last. So anyway, yes,
Right.
Make sure, dear listener, you've read up through to the end of that chapter that ends in "It had happened at last." Should be about chapter 6. And we'll be talking about that on the second episode.
That's right. And before we let you go, a couple of super quick reminders here at the end.
Yes.
The 2 best ways to support us is to become a patron
Mm-hmm.
and to get yourself some Dune-themed swag from our merch store. All of those links will be in the show notes below. As we mentioned earlier, we are actually doing a live recording right now of this episode.
Yeah.
And there are patrons listening to us right now, and we've been interacting with them in the chat. That's just one of the many great benefits you get when you support us on Patreon.
It's
So
true.
go check out those links.
And finally, we love to hear from you, especially if you're reading along with us. What are your thoughts? What are your takeaways? What are the things that really jumped out at you? As we continue to read this book, we want to hear from you. So send us an email. The email address is, I bet you won't believe this, gomjabarpodcast@gmail.com.
What?
What? Crazy. We just got that set up 4 years ago. So send us an email, gomjabarpodcast@gmail.com. We love to hear from you. Pictures of pets, whatever, questions, comments, feedback. You think we can make the show better? Let us know. We're not set in our ways.
Yeah.
We're not like Schwang Yu. We're down to change. We're down to get better. Just let us know. Send us an email.
That's right.
Do you think Schwang Yu always has tobacco in her mouth? Or do you think she's just like, do you think she waits for like opportune, annoying moments to start chewing?
Oh. No, she definitely strikes me as the trucker who's never without the tobacco.
You hear her
You
chewing
know.
it before she comes into the room.
Right. That's in fact how you know Schwang Yu is about to walk in the room. You just hear,
Bing!
you're like, God damn it, Schwang Yu's here, everybody. Just get ready. Oh, she's here. Hi, Schwang Yu. Hi, how are you? How's
bad.
Tell me
I'm
about
bad.
the key.
Everything's
Tell me
bad.
about the
You're
key.
bad.
Okay, everything's bad. Got it. Great. God. Yeah, great. Okay, I'm gonna finish up my
Good talk.
good talk. I'm gonna. God
Quit.
damn it.
Fuck this.
I quit.
Well, friends, there is no real ending. It's just the place where you stop the recording. But this podcast is always one step beyond logic, so help spread the word of Muad'Dib and leave us a review in Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And be sure to check out the other shows on the Lore Party Podcast Network on loreparty.com. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at lore_party. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, whoever controls the podcast controls the universe. We'll see you on the golden path.